I was running the excavator when my phone buzzed against my hip. 3:30 on a Tuesday, middle of another foundation pour, and Frank Morrison was calling me. Frank never called during work hours. Hell, Frank barely called at all. We'd been neighbors for 8 years, nodding over fence posts and borrowing tools, but phone calls meant something was wrong. I shut down the machine and climbed out, hard hat tucked under my arm as I answered. "What's up, Frank?" I said into the phone. "Mike." His voice came back with that flat military tone he used when things got serious. 20 years in the Army had taught Frank to deliver bad news clean and quick. "You need to come home. Now." The construction site noise faded around me. "What happened?" "Emily, okay?" I asked quickly. "There's a black sedan in your driveway that ain't yours," he replied grimly. The words hit like a punch to the gut. 16 years of marriage, and I'd never questioned Emily's faithfulness. Not once. We'd built something solid together. Or so I thought. The house, the routine, the quiet comfort of knowing someone was waiting for you at the end of every hard day. "You sure it's not her sister's car?" I asked. Even as I said it, I knew it was bullshit. Sarah drove a white Honda, same one for 3 years. "Mike, I've been watching for 40 minutes. That sedan's been there since noon. Emily came home at 12:15. She's been inside with whoever drives that car ever since," Frank explained. My hands started shaking. The phone felt slippery against my ear, and I had to grip it tighter. Around me, the crew kept working, pouring concrete like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. "Frank," I started, "get in your truck and drive home. Don't call her. Don't text. Just come home and park on the street. I'll be waiting," he commanded. Then the line went dead. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the phone, trying to process what Frank had just told me. Emily. My Emily. The woman who made coffee every morning at 5:45 so it would be ready when I woke up. Who fell asleep watching old movies on my shoulder every Sunday night. Who'd cried when we couldn't have kids and held my hand through my father's funeral last spring. But Frank didn't make mistakes. 20 years of military service had trained him to observe and report facts, not speculation. If he said there was trouble at my house, there was trouble at my house. I told my foreman I had a family emergency and drove home in a haze. The familiar streets of our neighborhood looked different somehow, like I was seeing them through someone else's eyes. The Hendersons' yellow house with the overgrown hedge. The stop sign at Maple and 3rd where teenagers always ran the red. The coffee shop where Emily and I had our first date 17 years ago. All of it felt foreign now, like props in a play I didn't know I was performing in. Frank was waiting in his driveway when I pulled up. He walked over to my truck before I'd even turned off the engine, moving with that purposeful stride that had never left him despite being retired for 5 years. His gray hair was buzzed short, and his weathered face was set in hard lines. "Black Audi," he said without preamble. "License plate starts with JTR. Been here 2 hours and 20 minutes. I looked at my house, our house, and saw the sedan parked in the driveway like it belonged there, right where I usually parked my pickup after work. The front door was closed, but the living room curtains were drawn tight. They were never closed during the day. "What do I do?" I asked. The words came out cracked and small. Frank's expression softened just a fraction. "You document everything. Get your phone out and start recording. Whatever you find in there, you record it. Don't react, don't yell, don't throw punches. Just record," he instructed firmly. "Frank, I can't," I protested. "You can and you will," he interrupted. "You've got 16 years invested in this marriage and half your assets tied up in that house. You don't want to give her lawyers any ammunition to use against you, so you stay calm, you record everything, and you let the evidence speak for itself." He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing something and doing it are two different things when your world is collapsing around you. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. My hands were steadier now. Something about having a plan, even a terrible one, helped focus my mind. "I'll be right behind you," Frank assured me. just in case. We walked across the street together, our footsteps loud on the asphalt. The afternoon sun was bright and warm, birds singing in the oak tree we'd planted for our 10th anniversary. Everything looked normal except for that black sedan sitting in my driveway like an accusation. The front door was unlocked. It was never unlocked when Emily was home alone. She was paranoid about security, always double-checking the locks before bed. But today, it turned easily under my hand. I started recording as I stepped inside. The living room looked normal except for the men's jacket draped over the back of my leather recliner. A jacket I'd never seen before, expensive-looking charcoal wool. On the coffee table sat 2 wine glasses, both half empty, next to a bottle of the good Cabernet we'd been saving for our anniversary next month. My throat tightened, but I kept the camera steady. A trail of clothes led from the living room toward the stairs. Emily's blue blouse, the one she'd worn to work that morning, crumpled on the hardwood floor. A man's dress shirt draped over the banister. Her black skirt at the bottom of the steps. Each piece of clothing was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I recorded them all. Frank stayed close behind me, saying nothing, his presence solid and reassuring. The sounds from upstairs made my stomach clench. Low murmurs, rhythmic creaking, the unmistakable sounds of betrayal happening in the bed I'd shared with my wife for 16 years. I climbed the stairs slowly, recording every step, every sound. The bedroom door was half open, and through the gap I could see moving shadows on the wall. My wall, in my bedroom, in my bed. Frank's hand touched my shoulder briefly, not restraining, just reminding me he was there. I reached the door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open wide. Emily froze mid-motion when she saw me, her eyes going wide with shock and something that might have been fear. The man beneath her, dark-haired, maybe 40, someone I'd never seen before, jerked upright so violently he nearly threw her off the bed. "Oh, God," Emily whispered in horror. "Mike, this isn't what it looks like." I kept the camera rolling, capturing everything. Her naked body scrambling for the sheets, his panicked face as he tried to cover himself, the rumpled bed where my wife had been with a stranger in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. "This isn't what it looks like," I repeated her words back to her, my voice flat and emotionless. "What does it look like, Emily?" The stranger finally found his voice. "Look, man, I didn't know," he stammered. "Shut up." Frank's command cut through the room like a blade. He stepped around me toward the bed. "Both of you, shut the hell up." Emily wrapped the sheet around herself, tears starting to stream down her face. "Mike, please, let me explain," she pleaded desperately. "There's nothing to explain," I replied coldly. I kept recording as Frank grabbed the stranger by the arm and hauled him out of bed. The man stumbled, trying to maintain some dignity while completely naked and obviously terrified. "Get your clothes," Frank told him with deadly calm. "You've got 60 seconds to get dressed and get out." "Wait, you can't just—" the stranger protested weakly. Frank slammed him against the bedroom wall hard enough to rattle the family photos hanging there. 2 quick punches to the solar plexus left the stranger gasping and doubled over, all fight knocked out of him. 50 seconds, Frank said conversationally. The man stumbled toward his clothes, pulling on pants and shirt with shaking hands. He kept glancing at me, at the phone recording everything, at Frank who stood ready to deliver more punishment. Emily huddled on the bed, crying harder now, her mascara leaving black tracks down her cheeks. "Mike, please stop recording," she begged through her tears. "Please, we need to talk about this." "We needed to talk about this before you brought him into our bed," I answered with icy control. The words came out calm and measured, like I was discussing the weather. Inside, I felt hollow and cold. "Get dressed and get out of my house." "This is my house, too," she started to argue. "No," I cut her off sharply. I kept the camera on her face, making sure to capture every expression. Remember that prenup you signed 16 years ago? The one you thought was romantic because I was so committed to marrying you? Turns out it's not so romantic when you're the one violating it." The color drained from her face. She'd forgotten about the prenup. I could see it in her eyes. We both had, honestly. It had been my lawyer's idea, a standard protection for a man who owned his own house and had started building equity in a construction business. Emily had signed it without question, laughing about how paranoid lawyers were. The stranger finished dressing and stumbled toward the door. Frank followed him, not touching but making sure he understood the escort was non-negotiable. I heard them go down the stairs, heard the front door open and close. Through the bedroom window, I watched the man sprint across the lawn to his black Audi, not even bothering with dignity anymore. He fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up, and finally got the engine started. The sedan backed out of my driveway fast enough to leave rubber marks on the concrete. He didn't look back. Emily was still crying, still wrapped in the sheet that smelled like betrayal and broken promises. "Mike, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This was a mistake. A stupid mistake. It doesn't mean anything," she sobbed. "You're right," I said, still recording. "It doesn't mean anything. Our marriage doesn't mean anything. The 16 years we spent together don't mean anything. The promises we made don't mean anything. So pack your things and get out." "You can't just throw me out," she protested weakly. "The house is in my name. The prenup you signed waives any claim to marital property in case of adultery. I've got video evidence of your infidelity recorded in high definition," I stated with brutal clarity. I finally stopped recording and slipped the phone into my pocket. "You've got no legal standing to stay here, and I've got every right to have you removed if you refuse to leave voluntarily." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. And maybe she was. The man who'd loved her unconditionally for 16 years was gone, replaced by someone who understood the value of preparation and documentation. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked helplessly. "That's not my problem anymore," I replied without emotion. Frank returned, closing the bedroom door behind him. "Coast is clear. Your boyfriend won't be coming back anytime soon," he reported. "He's not my boyfriend," Emily whispered. "Then what is he?" I asked directly. She couldn't answer, couldn't explain, couldn't justify what I'd walked in on. So she cried instead, like tears would somehow wash away what I'd seen and recorded. "Get dressed," Frank told her with firm authority. "Pack what you need tonight. You can come back for the rest when Mike's at work, but you're not staying here." Emily looked between us, searching for some crack in our resolve. Finding none, she slowly got up and began pulling on clothes with shaking hands. Every movement was careful and deliberate, like she was afraid sudden motion might shatter whatever remained of her world. 20 minutes later, she was gone. Suitcase packed, car loaded, driving away from the house we'd shared for 16 years of marriage. She didn't say goodbye, didn't try to explain again. Just left, taking nothing that wasn't clearly hers. Frank locked the front door behind her and turned to me. "Beer?" he offered simply. I nodded. We settled in the living room, cold bottles in hand, watching a baseball game on the television like it was any other Tuesday evening. Like my marriage hadn't just exploded in the space of an hour. We didn't talk about what had happened, didn't analyze or speculate or plan next steps, just sat in comfortable silence, two men who understood that sometimes the most important conversations happen without words. The game went into extra innings, but neither of us minded. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, no relation to Frank despite the name, reviewed the video evidence with the clinical detachment that made her worth every dollar I paid her. She'd handled my business contracts for 5 years, but this was our first foray into family law. "This is about as airtight as it gets," she said, closing her laptop after watching the recording for the second time. "The prenuptial agreement is ironclad, and your video documentation eliminates any possibility of her claiming emotional distress or denial. She can't argue the adultery didn't happen when we have HD footage of her in the act." We were sitting in her office on Thursday morning, 2 days after my world imploded. Emily had been calling and texting non-stop, alternating between apologies and threats, begging and demands. I'd forwarded everything to Janet without reading most of it. "What about the house?" I asked. "Completely yours," she answered confidently. "The prenup specifies that marital property acquired before the marriage remains with the original owner, and assets acquired during the marriage revert to the injured party in cases of documented infidelity." Janet pulled out a legal pad covered with notes. "She signed away any claim to your pension, your business assets, even the joint savings account." "She's got nothing?" I confirmed. "She keeps her personal belongings and her car. It's in her name only. Everything else belongs to you," Janet explained with professional satisfaction. "The divorce should be finalized within 60 days if she doesn't contest it." "What if she does contest?" I pressed. "With this evidence?" "Her lawyer would advise against it. Any judge who sees this video will rule in your favor, and she'll end up paying both legal fees. She's better off accepting the settlement and moving on," she replied matter-of-factly. That afternoon, Emily's parents showed up at my house. Bob and Margaret Sullivan had been part of my life for 17 years, from our dating days through the wedding and all the holidays since. They'd always treated me like the son they'd never had. Now they looked ashamed and tired. "Mike," Bob started, his voice heavy with regret. "We came to apologize." I invited them in, offered coffee, they declined. We sat in the living room where Emily had entertained her lover just 2 days ago, the wine glasses long since washed and put away. "We raised her better than this," Margaret said, her eyes red from crying. "I don't understand how she could do such a thing to you, to your marriage." "She made her choice," I said simply. "We want you to know that we don't support what she did," Bob continued earnestly. "We told her she brought this on herself, that she has no right to expect forgiveness or sympathy. What she did was wrong, and she's going to have to live with the consequences." Their visit was brief but meaningful. Emily's own parents were publicly disowning her behavior, choosing to support me over their daughter. Word would spread through their church, their social circle, their extended family. Emily's reputation wouldn't survive the scandal. Frank stopped by that evening with 2 six-packs and an update on the neighborhood gossip. "Talked to Mrs. Henderson this afternoon," he said, settling into his usual spot on my couch. "She saw the whole drama with your wife's boyfriend running out of here half naked. Word's already spreading." "Good," I replied with satisfaction. "Emily's been staying with her friend Karen, but I heard Karen's husband isn't happy about it. Something about not wanting his kids exposed to that kind of influence," Frank reported. "The social consequences were piling up faster than I'd expected. Emily's affair wasn't just destroying our marriage, it was destroying her entire support network. Friends who'd known us as a couple were choosing sides, and the video evidence made those choices easy. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. Her lawyer called. She wants to meet tomorrow to discuss terms. Sounds like she's ready to cooperate." I showed the message to Frank, who nodded approval. "Smart move on her part. Fighting this would just make it worse for her," he observed. "Think she'll sign?" I asked. "She doesn't have a choice," he replied with certainty. "You documented everything, got evidence that can't be disputed, and her own family is backing you. She signs the papers and disappears quietly, or she fights it and gets humiliated in court." Frank took a long pull from his beer. "Either way, you win." The next morning, I met with Emily and her lawyer at Janet's office. Emily looked terrible, pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her lawyer, a nervous young man named Peterson, had clearly advised her that resistance was futile. "My client is prepared to accept the terms outlined in the prenuptial agreement," Peterson said without preamble. "She requests only that the proceedings remain as private as possible." "That's acceptable," Janet replied professionally. "Provided all assets are transferred without dispute and she vacates the marital home within 7 days." Emily signed the papers without looking at me once. Her signature was shaky, uncertain, nothing like the confident flourish she'd used on our marriage certificate 16 years ago. When it was over, she finally met my eyes. "Mike, she started softly. "Don't," I said quietly. "Just don't." She nodded and left with her lawyer, walking out of my life as quietly as she'd signed it away. The whole process took less than an hour. The divorce was finalized on a Friday morning in late March, exactly 58 days after I'd caught Emily with her lover. Judge Harrison reviewed the evidence, confirmed the prenuptial agreement, and granted the dissolution without comment or delay. Emily didn't contest anything, didn't ask for reconsideration, didn't even attend the final hearing. Janet handed me the decree with professional satisfaction. "It's done. The house, your business assets, your pension, the joint accounts, everything transfers to you as of today. She keeps her car and personal effects, nothing else," she confirmed. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. 16 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and asset transfers. But it was clean, final, and completely in my favor. Emily's parents had been true to their word. At Sunday service the week before, Bob Sullivan had publicly apologized to me in front of the entire congregation, stating that his daughter had betrayed not just her marriage vows, but the values they'd tried to instill in her. The pastor, a kind man named Father Mackenzie, had offered his support and prayers for my healing. The social ostracism was swift and complete. Emily's book club expelled her. The charity organizations where she'd volunteered quietly removed her from their boards. Even the grocery store clerks who'd known us for years treated her with cool politeness when she came to town. The mysterious lover never reappeared. Frank had done some discreet checking. The license plate belonged to a rental car, paid for by a credit card tied to a business address 3 towns over. Whether he was married, single, or just a coward, he'd vanished completely after his humiliating encounter with Frank's fists. "Probably has a wife and kids," Frank speculated one evening as we watched the sunset from my back porch. "Type of man who runs naked from another man's house isn't the type to stick around and face consequences." Emily left town the day after the divorce was finalized. I heard from Mrs. Henderson that she'd loaded her car with boxes and suitcases, leaving behind even the furniture that had technically been hers. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't leave a forwarding address, just drove away like she was fleeing a crime scene. In a way, she was. I spent Saturday afternoon changing the locks, more for psychological closure than security. Every key, every access code, every way she'd once entered my life was now sealed off. The house was truly mine now, legally and practically. Sunday evening, I sat in my kitchen reviewing bank statements and legal documents. The joint accounts had been substantial. Emily had been a good saver, I'd give her that. Her teacher's salary wasn't huge, but she'd contributed faithfully to our shared goals. Now those savings were mine entirely, along with the house, my business, and 16 years of accumulated assets. The prenup had protected everything. The video evidence had made her lies impossible. Frank's intervention had eliminated any threat from her lover. My lawyer's expertise had expedited the process. Every piece had fallen into place exactly as it should. Frank knocked on the back door around 8 o'clock, carrying a bottle of good whiskey and wearing a satisfied expression. "Figured we should mark the occasion properly," he said, setting the bottle on my kitchen table. "Complete victory deserves proper celebration." We drank to justice served and lessons learned, to the value of preparation and the importance of loyal friendship, to the truth that some betrayals can't be forgiven, only punished. The whiskey was smooth and expensive, nothing like the cheap beer we usually shared. It felt appropriate for the moment, a toast to endings and new beginnings, to the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. "What's next?" Frank asked as the bottle emptied. I looked around my kitchen, my house, my life reclaimed and secured. "Whatever I want," I said with quiet satisfaction. "That's the beauty of a clean break. No complications, no entanglements, no one to answer to but myself. Frank nodded approvingly. Freedom earned through smart planning and decisive action. Your old man would be proud, he observed. He was right. My father had been a practical man who believed in preparation, documentation, and following through on consequences. He'd taught me to think strategically, to protect what was mine, and to never let anyone take advantage of my trust twice. Emily had counted on forgiveness, on emotional reaction, on the assumption that 16 years of marriage meant something more than legal contracts and recorded evidence. She'd been wrong about all of it. The house was quiet after Frank left, but it wasn't empty. It was mine, completely and legally mine, filled with the satisfaction of justice served and the peace that comes from knowing the truth had prevailed. I went to bed that night in clean sheets, in my own house, with no secrets or lies poisoning the air. For the first time in months, I slept without dreams. 3 months later, Frank and I have settled into our ritual. Every Friday at 6:30, we sit on my front porch with cold beer and watch the quiet street. The neighborhood hasn't changed much. Same houses, same families, same peaceful rhythm of suburban life. But everything looks different now through the lens of hard-earned wisdom. The black sedan never returned. Emily never returned. The coward who'd fled my house naked and terrified never showed his face in our town again. Some problems, handled decisively, solve themselves permanently. My construction business is thriving. Word somehow spread that I was a man who handled betrayal with intelligence rather than emotion, who planned strategically and followed through on consequences. Clients respect that kind of character, and my reputation for reliability has never been stronger. The house feels more like home now than it ever did during my marriage. No hidden lies, no secret resentments, no wondering what was happening while I worked late at job sites. Just honest space for an honest man to live an honest life. Frank takes a long pull from his beer and nods toward the Hendersons' house, where their teenage daughter is saying goodbye to her boyfriend on the front steps. Kid's got good sense, he observes approvingly. Keeping things visible, above board. The way it should be, I agree. We don't talk much during these Friday sessions, but we don't need to. We've both learned the value of loyal friendship forged through shared crisis. Frank saw trouble coming and warned me. He helped me gather evidence instead of acting on emotion. He eliminated the threat when it needed eliminating. That kind of loyalty can't be bought or faked. The sun sets behind the oak trees, casting long shadows across the street where I once lived, lies without knowing it. Now I live truth, documented and verified, with a friend who understands the importance of watching out for each other. Sometimes Emily's parents drive past on their way to evening church services. Bob always waves. Margaret sometimes nods. They've never asked about their daughter, never mentioned where she went or what she's doing now. Some chapters close completely when they end. At 7:30, Mrs. Henderson brings out her garbage cans for tomorrow's pickup. Mr. Peterson walks his dog past our house, stopping to chat about the weather or the latest city council meeting. Normal life continuing normally, the way it should when everyone's honest about who they are and what they want. Frank finishes his beer and stands to leave, same as every Friday. Good week, he says simply. Good week, I agree. I stay on the porch after he goes, watching the street grow quiet as families settle in for the evening. Lights come on in windows. Television screens flicker blue in darkened living rooms. The ordinary magic of people living honest lives in honest homes. My phone doesn't ring with desperate calls or angry texts anymore. My mailbox doesn't fill with lawyers' letters or bills for someone else's mistakes. My house stays exactly as I leave it. No evidence of betrayal hidden in bedroom shadows or wine glasses on coffee tables. The peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of truth, earned through strategic thinking and decisive action. It's knowing that preparation matters, that loyalty has value, and that some bridges burn completely when they're built on lies. At 8 o'clock, I lock up and go inside, turning off the porch light behind me. Tomorrow, I'll work another honest day, come home to my honest house, and know that everything I see is exactly what it appears to be. Next Friday, Frank and I will sit here again, watching over our quiet street like sentries guarding against the return of lies and betrayal. Two men who learned the hard way that some friendships are forged in crisis, some victories are earned through preparation, and some peace comes only after justice is served. The street is empty now, peaceful under the streetlights. No black sedans, no hidden threats, no secrets waiting to destroy what took years to build. Just truth, finally, and the satisfaction of knowing it will stay that way. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.